11 aircraft ordered and 6 delivered. It's a fairly sad record thus far for the Airbus A330-800. What's even worse is that a little over a third of these aircraft may ultimately be cancelled, changing the record to just 7 aircraft ordered. Having entered service a little under 2 years ago, why is this shorter A330neo variant continuing to do so poorly? In this video, we examine the current state of the aircraft type and reasons why airlines are deciding to look to other comparable products instead. Launched in 2014 and first entering commercial service in 2020, the A330-800 has certainly had a generous amount of time to generate interest from airlines and collect orders. Unfortunately, not much has materialized over the years, as just 4 airlines are currently in Airbus's order books for the Dash 800. These carriers and their order quantities are Air Greenland with just 1 ordered, Garuda Indonesia with 4, Kuwait Airways with 4, and Uganda Airlines with 2. As Simple Flying has reported previously, Hawaiian Airlines at one time had 6 Airbus A330-800neo aircraft on order. However, at the last minute, the carrier made the decision to cancel its order. Instead, the US carrier would switch over to Boeing, ordering 10 787 Dreamliners. The reasons for the switch were rather interesting, and certainly a topic we'll cover in a later section of this video. As of this video's publication, 6 Dash 800s have been delivered, with 2 going to Uganda Airlines and 4 to Kuwait Airways. The first aircraft was delivered to Kuwait Airways in 2020, with the type operating its first commercial service in November the same year. Interestingly and unfortunately, 2 of the airline's 4 A330-800s are currently parked for reasons unknown. As for the 2 active aircraft, the jets have been flying from Kuwait City to Kathmandu, Kuala Lumpur, Paris and Casablanca in recent days. To frame the mystery of the A330-800's poor sales, it's worth examining Airbus's intention behind offering the aircraft in the first place. The A330-200 was designed to have a lower capacity than the Dash 300, but as a result have lower fuel burn and greater range. This made the variant ideal for long-haul operations where demand wouldn't justify the larger A330-300. And so, with near-identical cabin dimensions, the A330-800 was designed to be a direct replacement for the A330-200. Indeed, Airbus notes that the 25% improvement on fuel burn was made possible with a re-optimized wing, which is 64 meters or 210 feet across, compared to the A330-200's 60 meters or 197 feet. Airbus adds that the updated variant incorporates the latest generation Rolls-Royce Trent 7000 engines, along with new technologies and multiple aerodynamic improvements for increased lift and reduced drag, including composite winglet devices. And we can't exactly fault Airbus for offering the A330-800 to airlines and investing resources into developing this variant. Indeed, the A330-200 was a decent seller, having accumulated orders for over 500 examples of the passenger variant, with another 38 examples of the A330-200F or freighters produced. Dozens more A330-200s would be produced and sold as government and executive jets, with the Royal Air Force's A330 MRTT Voyager being just one example. Sadly, despite the Dash 200's popularity, airlines haven't exactly been seizing the opportunity for a straight-up modern replacement. With so many airlines operating the Dash 200, it would make sense to modernize with the Dash 800. The type rating is identical, capacity is the same, and maintenance crews are already familiar with much of the airframe. But if we look at airline orders, it's clear that many carriers around the world have decided that this shorter A330neo variant is not worth their time and resources. In fact, the airlines listed here were or are operators of the A330-200, but have decided to only place orders for the A330-900 and not the Dash 800. Air Belgium, Air Mauritius, Azul, Condor, Delta, ITA Airways, Malaysia Airlines, MEA or Middle Eastern Airlines, and TAP Air Portugal. Sadly, an even longer list of airlines operating the A330-200 have opted to ignore the A330neo completely, looking to other aircraft to fill a similar role instead. We won't list every carrier here, but KLM, Air France and American Airlines are just a few of the carriers who operate or have operated the A330-200 but haven't looked at any A300neo variant as a replacement. This, of course, is one massive hint for the Dash 800's unpopularity. There are several reasons we can offer that might explain the continued unpopularity of the A330-800. Let's go through the list. With a similar fuselage length and width, the Boeing 787-8 competes well with the A330-800. The major difference is that the shortest Dreamliner variant was launched 10 years earlier. Despite some major setbacks early on and a delivery halt more recently, the Dreamliner program has now delivered over 1,000 airframes, quenching some of the demand that might have been met by the A330neo. The Dreamliner's competitive economics in terms of range and cargo capacity also provide some convincing reasons for airlines to go with Boeing rather than a comparable Airbus product. This may be one of the biggest reasons why many A330-200 operators have not ordered the Dash 800, as they have already modernized their fleets with either the 787-8 or 787-9. This is indeed the case with many airlines, including but not limited to Air China, Air France, American Airlines, Avianca, China Eastern, China Southern, Etihad, KLM and Qantas. Considering how many A330-200s these airlines operate and the Boeing 787s they've ordered, it's not too surprising that they no longer have a need for the Dash 800. As outlined by Leham News, there isn't much of a difference in flight crew cost between the A330-800 and Dash 900. In terms of maximum capacities, the Dash 900 is capable of accommodating a little over 50 more passengers. In terms of crew cost, just a single additional flight attendant is required to manage this increased capacity. Additionally, maintenance costs between the Dash 800 and Dash 900 are the same, with Leham News adding that navigation, landing and handling costs are also quite similar. Thus, it's calculated that the A330-900 per seat cost is 13% lower than the Dash 800. So while the A330-800 objectively is a little more fuel efficient and can fly further, the Dash 900's increased capacity allows airlines to accommodate more passengers and generate more revenue with near negligible additional cost. Yes, the A330-800 does have a published range that is nearly 1,000 nautical miles above the Dash 900. To be more specific, Airbus notes that the shorter variant can fly a maximum of 15,094 kilometers or 8,150 nautical miles versus the Dash 900's 13,334 kilometers or 7,200 nautical miles. However, it appears that A330-200 operators that have chosen the Dash 900 simply don't need the extended range, instead opting for the higher capacity. While it's perhaps not a huge reason, it's also important to consider the fact that the A330neo program is tied exclusively to the Rolls-Royce Trent 7000 power plant. This single-engine option stands in stark contrast to the original A330 platform, which offered three options: the General Electric CF6-80E, the Pratt & Whitney PW4000, or the Rolls-Royce Trent 700. If we look at A330-200 operator Korean Air specifically, we can see that the airline has more often chosen aircraft that are powered by either General Electric or Pratt & Whitney engines. Even when it comes to the airline's aircraft that have multiple engine options, the airline has opted to go with the option that is not Rolls-Royce. The Airbus A380, Boeing 747, 787 and 777 are just some examples of this decision-making pattern. Perhaps adding Rolls-Royce power plants to its fleets would be presenting more complexity than it wishes to handle, something that could also be the case for other airlines. It may sound strange. The A330-800's lack of popularity is due to its lack of popularity. But perhaps one of the more obscure reasons for snubbing the A330-800 comes from Hawaiian Airlines, who ordered the type but eventually cancelled and switched to the 787. Speaking to Business Insider, airline CEO Peter Ingram told the publication, "Unfortunately, the A330-800 has not proved to be as popular in the marketplace. It doesn't make sense to remain committed to an airplane that had the risk of not being sufficiently accepted in the marketplace in the future. So the lack of orders for the A330-800 opened us up to having a competition to look at the wide-body platform for us going into the decade. While this reasoning is completely understandable, it also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hawaiian Airlines sees it as unpopular, cancels its order, and thus further reinforces its unpopularity. That's not to say that Hawaiian's order of 6-800s would be the catalyst for a flood of orders, but there's always the chance of a snowball effect, with more airlines considering the type as others come on board. So what's next for the A330-800? Well, at the time of this video's publication, Airbus is going through the last few test procedures as it prepares Air Greenland's single A330-800 for delivery before the end of the year. The jet will replace the carrier's -200, which it intends to sell for the right price. Air Greenland's decision to purchase the -800 demonstrates one of the key strengths of the variant: the ability to take off and land on short runways, an issue common at the various airports around Greenland. Unfortunately, this ability isn't very sought after when it comes to many of the world's airports and their sufficiently long runways. If we were to try and be optimistic, we could say that higher fuel costs combined with pandemic-gained wisdom could prompt airlines to consider the A330-800. The aircraft's lower capacity and slightly higher efficiency could be a good hedge against other COVID-19-like occurrences, where travel restrictions severely restrict demand and activity. Additionally, some A330-200 operators have yet to update their fleets, giving a small sliver of hope for more orders. In this respect, Aerolíneas Argentinas will be an interesting airline to watch, as the carrier operates 8 A330-200s. However, these jets are just 12 years old, meaning that their replacement could be a decade away. Garuda Indonesia will be another interesting airline to watch. While its order for 4 -800s is still on the books, the airline has been looking to restructure and become more efficient and profitable. In March of this year, we reported that the airline was considering cancelling some of its aircraft orders, which might just include the -800. It will also be interesting to see if Airbus chooses to modernise other products based on the A330-200 platform, such as the A330 MRTT and the A330-200F. When it comes to the A330 MRTT, military customers around the world would certainly make good use of the -800's increased efficiency and range, in addition to short-field takeoff performance. A freighter variant is more difficult to predict, particularly as Airbus focuses on the A350F, as well as its stake in EFW, which has been seeing a surge of airlines wanting to convert their older Airbus jets into freighters. Finally, we always have the possibility of government and executive customers placing orders for the private version of the A330-800, the ACJ330neo. Ultimately, the A330-800 looks like it could very well end up as a rare aircraft in a very niche role, something that the Boeing 767-400ER found itself in over 2 decades ago. In the end, only Delta Airlines and Continental Airlines would order the stretched 767 variant, and Boeing ultimately only racked up orders and deliveries for just 38 aircraft from the 2 carriers. Of course, the 767-400's unpopularity is at least better than the current state of the A330-800 and its 11, but possibly just 7 aircraft ordered. So what do you think about the current state and future state of the Airbus A330-800? Is its golden age yet to come, or is it already in the history books as a flop? Share your thoughts and opinions by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.